The galaxy had known about Earth for more than 300 years. The hegemony was a powerful group of 17 different alien species who traveled among the stars. They had watched the small blue planet called Earth with mild interest as humans slowly grew smarter and more advanced. First, humans learned to use radio waves. Then they discovered nuclear power. Finally, in the year 2147, humans built ships that could travel faster than light itself. When humanity first met the aliens, the whole galaxy was surprised. These soft creatures with short lives were almost too friendly. It seemed like they wanted to make friends with everyone they met. Ambassador Cole was the first human to speak for Earth at the Galactic Assembly. She smiled through every insult that came her way. She nodded politely when the delegate called humans barely evolved primates who had just climbed down from trees. She kept her calm face when the ambassador refused to shake her hand because he said human touch was dirty and contaminating. Earth asked for nothing from anyone. Humans offered trade deals that helped other species more than themselves. They sent doctors and nurses to planets destroyed by war. They shared their medical discoveries freely without asking for payment. When two species fought over borders, human diplomats volunteered to help them find peace. High Commander was the leader of the military forces. He sat in his war room and watched recordings of human diplomats bowing and smiling. His scaled face twisted with disgust. These creatures had no pride. They had no honor. They let other species walk all over them like dirt. They are weak, declared to his council. Their kindness comes from fear. They smile because they know they cannot fight. They offer gifts because they are afraid of what we might do to them. The other commanders nodded in agreement. Everyone in the galaxy knew that humans were soft. Their bones broke easily. Their skin tore like paper. They needed to eat 3 times every day and sleep for 8 hours every night. How could such fragile beings ever be a threat to anyone? Admiral Price worked for Earth's United Defense Fleet. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. Every week, he received new reports about warships flying near human colony worlds. The aliens called these flights training exercises. Knew better. He had been a soldier for 40 years. He knew what an invasion force looked like when it was getting ready. Filed diplomatic protests through proper channels. He suggested peace talks. He offered cultural exchange programs where humans could learn about each other. He did everything by the book, following every rule of galactic diplomacy. They laughed at him. They sent back recordings of their commanders mocking his requests. They flew their warships even closer to human colonies. They wanted humans to know that they could attack whenever they wanted. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains on Earth, there was a secret bunker. It was buried 3 miles underground, hidden from every sensor and scanner in the galaxy. This was where Earth's true leaders met to discuss things that the rest of the universe could never know about. Sat at a long table across from Defense Secretary Maria Santos. She was a small woman with dark hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Next to her sat General Christopher Lane, a broad-shouldered man who had fought in 3 wars before humans ever met aliens. "How long do we keep acting like this?" asked quietly. His voice was calm, but his hands were tight fists under the table. "How long do we smile and nod while they prepare to kill us?" Maria looked at him with understanding. She knew how hard it was to appear weak when you were anything but. "Until they force our hand, not one moment before. We have worked too hard and waited too long to throw it all away because of impatience. And when they finally attack, when they kill our people." Christopher touched a button on the table. A holographic display appeared in the air above them. It showed ships that looked nothing like the old, outdated vessels that humans showed to the galaxy. These were weapons of war. Sleek destroyers with enough firepower to crack a moon in half. Carriers filled with thousands of fighter craft. Battleships that could go toe-to-toe with anything that had ever built. "Then we stop being polite," Christopher said simply. The display showed more than just ships. It showed hidden bases carved into asteroids. It showed weapons platforms disguised as communication satellites. It showed an entire military machine that humanity had built in secret over 200 years, while the rest of the galaxy laughed at them. Why? Asked. It was a question he had asked before but never really understood the answer. Why did we hide all of this? Why did we let them think we were weak? Maria stood up and walked to a window that showed a fake view of mountains. The real view was just rock and darkness 3 miles down. Because we learned from our own history, she said. Humans spent thousands of years killing each other. We fought wars over land, over religion, over resources, over things so small that we cannot even remember them now. We almost destroyed ourselves a dozen times before we finally learned the truth. What truth? That the species which appears strongest becomes the target. Every other nation, every other group, they all unite against the one they fear most. But the species that appears weak, that seems harmless, that smiles and offers friendship. Maria turned to look at him. That species is ignored. That species is allowed to grow and build and prepare in peace. Thought about this. Humans had spent 3 centuries being laughed at. They had endured insults and mockery from every alien species they met. Their diplomats had smiled through humiliation after humiliation. And all that time, they had been building. They think they are the hunters, Christopher said. They think we are prey. They have no idea what they are walking into. When will they attack? Asked. Maria returned to her seat. Her face was sad but determined. Soon. Our intelligence suggests they are planning to hit one of our outer colonies. They want to send a message. They want to show the galaxy what happens to weak species who spread too far. Can we stop them? No, Maria shook her head. If we move our hidden forces to protect the colonies, we reveal ourselves too soon. The other species will unite against us just like they would have united against us 300 years ago. We must let them strike first. We must let them show the galaxy that they are the aggressors. Closed his eyes. He thought about the families living on those outer colonies, farmers and teachers and children who had no idea what was coming. How many will die? Too many, Maria whispered. But their sacrifice will not be forgotten, and it will not be in vain. When humanity finally shows its true face, every species in the galaxy will know that we tried peace first. They will know that we gave the every chance to walk away. And when they refuse, Maria's eyes went hard as stone. Then we teach the galaxy why humans should never be underestimated. Then we show them what happens when you mistake kindness for weakness. Nodded slowly. He did not like this plan. He hated the idea of letting innocent people die when he had the power to save them. But he understood why it had to be this way. Humanity was playing a game that would last for centuries. They could not afford to think only about today. I will be ready, he said. I know you will. Maria reached across the table and touched his hand. We all will. In the darkness beneath the mountains, humanity waited for the storm that was coming. The attack came on March 15, 2203. It was a date that humanity would never forget. Harvest III was a peaceful world on the outer edge of human space. It was an agricultural colony, which meant that most of the people who lived there were farmers. They grew wheat and corn and vegetables that were shipped to other human worlds. 40,000 people called Harvest III their home. They were simple folk who wanted nothing more than to work their land and raise their families in peace. Governor Daniel had led the colony for 15 years. He was 63 years old with white hair and gentle hands that had spent more time holding farming tools than weapons. Daniel had never wanted to be a politician. He had come to Harvest III as a young man to escape the crowded cities of Earth. He had fallen in love with the open fields and the quiet life. When the colonists asked him to be their leader, he accepted only because no one else wanted the job. The message arrived at 3 in the morning local time. Daniel was asleep in his small house at the edge of the capital settlement when his communication device started screaming. He stumbled out of bed and answered the call with blurry eyes. The face on the screen was not human. It was High Commander of the Hegemony. His scaled skin was green and gray, and his yellow eyes burned with cruel amusement. "Human Governor," said. His voice was cold and sharp like breaking ice. "You have 30 minutes to surrender your colony unconditionally. Every human on this world will become property of the hegemony. You will work for us until you die. If you refuse, we will burn your world to ash." The screen went dark before Daniel could respond. He stood there for a long moment, trying to understand what had just happened. Then he ran. The communication center was a small building in the middle of town. Boyd was the night shift operator, a young woman of 25 who had been born on Harvest III. She looked up in surprise when Daniel burst through the door, still wearing his sleeping clothes. "Governor, what is wrong?" Daniel gasped. He was out of breath from running. "They are here. They are going to attack." His face went pale. Her hands started to shake as she turned to her console. The sensors showed 12 cruisers and one massive dreadnought in orbit above their world. It was more firepower than the entire human fleet was supposed to have. "Send the evacuation order," Daniel said. His voice was steady now even though his heart was pounding. "Get everyone to the underground shelters. Now." "Sir, the shelters were built for natural disasters. They can handle earthquakes and storms, but if they use plasma cannons—" Could not finish the sentence. Tears were streaming down her face. "I know," Daniel put a hand on her shoulder, "but it is all we have. Send the message. Give our people a chance." Nodded and started typing. Across the colony, alarms began to wail. Lights came on in every building as 40,000 people woke up to the worst news of their lives. Daniel watched through the window as families ran through the streets. Parents carried sleeping children. Old people helped each other walk. Everyone was moving toward the shelter entrances as fast as they could. "Send a message to Earth Command," Daniel said quietly. "Tell them what happened here. Tell them we tried to be peaceful. Tell them." He stopped and took a deep breath. "Tell them not to let our deaths be meaningless." Sent the message. Then she stood up and hugged the old governor. They both knew they were going to die. The bombardment began at 3:31 in the morning. They were thorough and cruel. They wanted to make an example of this colony. They wanted every species in the galaxy to see what happened to those who expanded into territory that the hegemony claimed as their own. The hospital was the first target. Blue plasma fire rained down from the sky and turned the building into a crater. 300 patients and 50 medical staff died in an instant. Next came the schools, empty at this hour but destroyed anyway to send a message. Then the residential areas where families were still running for shelter. The broadcast everything. They sent live video to every corner of their territory, showing the human colony burning. Commander provided commentary, laughing as buildings collapsed and people screamed. "Look at them run," he said to his audience. "These pathetic creatures thought they could spread across the stars. They thought they could be our equals. Now they learn the truth. Humans are nothing but insects, and insects are meant to be crushed." In the underground shelters, people huddled together and listened to the world above them die. The ground shook with every explosion. Dust fell from the ceiling. Children cried and parents tried to comfort them with lies about how everything would be okay. Daniel never made it to a shelter. He stayed in the communication center, sending updates to Earth until a plasma bolt hit the building directly. He died instantly, along with the 3 other operators who had refused to leave their posts. 31,000 humans died in the first hour of the attack. Men, women, children, entire families wiped from existence. The shelters saved some, but not enough. Never enough. When they finally stopped firing, Harvest III was a burning wasteland. Fields that had grown food for millions were now black and dead. Cities that had been home to laughter and love were now smoking ruins. The colony that humans had built over 50 years of hard work was gone in less than 3 hours. On Earth, The emergency session of the United Nations began within 90 minutes of the attack. Representatives from every nation on the planet gathered in the Great Assembly Hall. The room was silent except for the sound of crying. Many of the diplomats had friends or family on Harvest III. All of them had seen the broadcast. Secretary General Victor stood at the podium. He was a tall man with silver hair and dark skin. His hands trembled as he gripped the edges of the podium, but his voice was strong. "The hegemony has committed an act of war against humanity," he said. "They have murdered our civilians. They have destroyed our homes. They have broadcast the deaths of our children as entertainment for their people." He paused and looked out at the assembly. Every face was filled with grief and rage. "For 3 centuries we have been patient. We have been kind. We have turned the other cheek so many times that the galaxy believes we have no spine. They think we are weak. They think we are afraid. They think they can kill us without consequence." Victor set aside his prepared remarks. He did not need them anymore. The words came from his heart. They were wrong. He touched a button on the podium. The screens around the assembly hall flickered and changed. Instead of showing news reports about the attack, they now showed something that most humans had never seen. Ships, hundreds of ships, thousands of ships, an armada that dwarfed anything the galaxy had ever known. "For 200 years we have prepared for this day," Victor said. "We hoped it would never come. We prayed that peace would be possible, but we knew that the universe is not always kind to those who refuse to fight." The assembly watched in stunned silence as the screens showed weapon after weapon, fleet after fleet, all hidden in secret bases throughout human space. Today we stop pretending. Today they learn the true price of human blood. Today the galaxy learns why humanity should never be underestimated. Victor raised his fist in the air. "For Harvest III, for our fallen, for humanity." The assembly rose as one, their voices joining in a roar that shook the walls. 3 centuries of hidden strength was about to be unleashed. They had no idea what they had awakened. Across the stars, human soldiers received their orders. Engineers powered up weapons that had never been fired. Pilots climbed into fighters that had never flown in combat. An entire species that had pretended to be harmless for 300 years prepared to show the galaxy what they really were. The age of human courtesy was over. The age of human fury was about to begin. Admiral Price stood on the bridge of the S Retribution and watched as his fleet emerged from hiding. For 200 years, these ships had been disguised as cargo haulers and mining vessels. They had traveled the trade routes of the galaxy, smiled at customs officers, and pretended to be harmless merchants. Now their true forms were revealed. The cargo ships opened like flowers blooming in spring. Hidden panels slid away to show rows of weapon batteries that could tear through any armor. The mining vessels transformed into aircraft carriers, their hollow cargo bays filled with thousands of fighter craft. What the galaxy had believed were outdated frigates turned out to be stealth destroyers carrying enough firepower to crack a moon in half. 300 warships surrounded the Retribution. This was only the first fleet. 5 more fleets waited throughout human space, each one just as powerful. They had kicked a hornet nest thinking it was empty. They were about to discover just how wrong they had been. Captain Laura Mitchell stood at the tactical station. She was a small woman with red hair and freckles, but her eyes were hard as steel. She had lost her brother on Harvest III. He had been a schoolteacher there, helping children learn to read and write. Now he was ash floating in the wind of a dead world. "First Fleet is fully deployed, Admiral," Laura reported. Her voice was calm and professional. There would be time for grief later. Right now, there was work to be done. 2nd through 5th Fleets report ready status. 6th Fleet is holding position at the border. Nodded, the plan was simple. 1st Fleet would engage the forces that had attacked Harvest III. The other fleets would form a defensive line to prevent any counterattack. If the hegemony wanted a war, they would get one. "What about the survivors?" asked. "Search and rescue teams have reached the surface. They found 9,000 people alive in the underground shelters." Laura paused and swallowed hard. "The left after the bombardment. They thought everyone was dead." 9,000 out of 40,000. Felt the number burn into his memory. He would carry it with him for the rest of his life. Those 31,000 deaths would be answered, every single one. "Open a channel to the flagship," ordered. The communication officer worked at his console for a moment. "Channel open, sir." The main flickered and changed. High Commander appeared, sitting in his command chair with an arrogant smile on his scaled face. Behind him could see the bridge of the dreadnought. It was an impressive ship, 2 kilometers long and covered with weapon batteries. The hegemony had ruled the stars for 1,000 years with vessels like this. Looked at the human fleet on his own screens. His smile grew wider. "Admiral Price," the alien commander said, "I see you have gathered your little boats. How cute. Have you come to negotiate surrender terms? We might be merciful if you grovel adequately. Perhaps we will only enslave half of your species instead of all of them." Did not respond to the insult. Instead, he touched a button on his chair. "Commander, I am transmitting to you the complete technical specifications of the weapon currently targeting your dreadnought. Please review them carefully." Translator implant fed the data directly into his brain. Watched the alien's face change as he understood what he was seeing. The arrogant smile disappeared. The yellow eyes went wide. The green scales turned pale. "That is not possible," whispered. "The energy requirements alone would need." 4 antimatter reactors in parallel configuration," said calmly. "Yes, we have 6 installed on each of our battleships. The weapon you are looking at can fire a concentrated beam of antiprotons that will pass through your shields like they are not there. It will then convert the matter of your hull directly into energy. The explosion will be visible from 3 star systems away." Stared at him. For the first time in his long military career, the High Commander had no words. "You have committed genocide against civilian targets," continued. His voice was still calm, but there was iron underneath it. "Under the United Earth Charter, this is classified as a crime against humanity. The punishment is death or life imprisonment, to be determined by a proper trial." "You cannot put me on trial," snarled. "I am a High Commander of the hegemony. I answer to no one but the High Council." "You will answer to us," leaned forward in his chair. "You will surrender your fleet and submit to justice. Your ships will power down their weapons and prepare for boarding. Your crews will be treated fairly and given proper food and shelter until their fate is decided. And if I refuse, then you will be destroyed." Let that statement hang in the air for a moment. "All of you, every ship in your fleet. We will leave nothing but atoms floating in the void." Laughed, but it was a nervous sound. "You are bluffing. Even if your weapons are as powerful as you claim, the hegemony will send 100 fleets to avenge us. Your species will be wiped from existence." "The hegemony will try," agreed. "And they will fail, but that is a problem for another day. Right now you have a choice to make. Surrender or die. There is no third option. The do not surrender to lesser species. Then you will die as fools." Check the countdown timer on his display. "You have 5 minutes to power down your weapons. This is Earth's final warning, Commander. Stop your attack or we stop pretending to be courteous." Cut the communication channel. On the tactical display, Laura watched the fleet begin to move into attack formation. "They are not standing down," she reported. "Enemy ships are charging weapons and raising shields." Had expected this. They were too proud to surrender, too arrogant to believe that they could lose. They had ruled the stars for so long that they could not imagine being defeated by creatures they considered inferior. "All ships battle stations," ordered. "Weapons free on my command." Around him, the bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency. They had trained for this moment their entire careers. Every drill, every simulation, every late night studying tactical manuals had led to this point. "Enemy dreadnought is targeting us with main batteries," Laura called out. "Impact in 30 seconds. Helm evasive pattern delta. Gunnery, target the dreadnought's reactor section." The Retribution moved like a dancer, sliding sideways through space as the plasma bolts passed harmlessly by. The alien gunners were good, but the human ship was faster and more agile than anything they had ever faced. "Weapons locked," the gunnery officer reported. Took a deep breath. This was the moment. After 3 centuries of pretending, humanity was about to show the galaxy what they could really do. Fire! The main cannon of the Retribution activated. A beam of pure antiprotons lanced across the void, moving at nearly the speed of light. It struck the dreadnought amidships, passing through the shields as if they did not exist. For a single heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the dreadnought began to glow. The matter of its hull was converting to energy, just as had promised. The glow became brighter and brighter until it was impossible to look at directly. Then the ship was gone. 2 kilometers of armored hull, thousands of crew members, centuries of engineering, all converted into an expanding ball of plasma that lit up the darkness of space like a new sun. The bridge was silent. Even though they had known what would happen, even though they had seen the simulations 100 times, watching it for real was something else entirely. "Target destroyed," Laura said quietly. Nodded. He felt no joy, no triumph. Only a heavy sadness and a grim determination to finish what they had started. "All ships engage remaining enemy vessels. Disable if possible, destroy if necessary. I want prisoners for the trial." The human fleet moved forward, and the Battle of Harvest III truly began. The Battle of Harvest III lasted 17 minutes. In that short time, the galaxy changed forever. After watching their dreadnought disappear in a flash of light, the remaining ships scattered like frightened animals. Some tried to fight back, firing their weapons at the human fleet in desperate fury. Others tried to run, pushing their engines to maximum power in hopes of escaping to faster-than-light speed. None of it mattered. The human ships moved with terrible precision. They had trained for 200 years in secret, running simulations and practicing maneuvers that no one in the galaxy knew about. Every captain knew exactly where to be and what to do. Every gunner had fired these weapons 1,000 times in virtual reality. Every pilot had memorized the attack patterns until they could fly them in their sleep. Captain Laura Mitchell tracked the enemy movements on her tactical display. Her fingers flew across the controls, calling out targets with mechanical efficiency. She felt nothing as she watched the ships die. Later, she would feel. Later, she would cry for her brother and rage at the unfairness of the universe. But right now, she was a weapon, and weapons did not have emotions. "Cruiser 7 is trying to flank us," she reported. "Destroyer Wing 3 intercept." 3 human destroyers broke formation and swooped toward the enemy cruiser. Their weapons fired in perfect unison, 3 beams of antiprotons striking the ship at the same moment. The cruiser's shields flickered and died. A second volley tore through the hull, and the ship broke apart in a shower of debris and frozen atmosphere. Cruiser 7 destroyed. Enemy cruisers 8 and 9 are attempting to surrender. "Accept their surrender," Admiral Price ordered. "Disable their weapons and engines, then move on. We will collect them after the battle." One by one, the ships fell. Some were destroyed outright when they refused to stop fighting. Others were disabled and left drifting in space, their crews waiting to be captured. The human fleet was not cruel. They did not fire on ships that had surrendered. They did not target escape pods or rescue shuttles. They were warriors, not murderers. But they were also thorough. 3 cruisers managed to reach the edge of the battle zone and jump to faster-than-light speed. Watched them go on the tactical display and made no move to stop them. Should I order pursuit? Laura asked. No, shook his head slowly. Let them run. Let them tell the hegemony what happened here. Let them spread the word to every corner of the galaxy. Laura understood. The three escaping ships were not failures. They were messengers. They would carry the story of this battle to every species that had ever laughed at humanity. They would show the galaxy that the smiling diplomats and friendly merchants had been hiding something terrifying all along. Across known space, billions of beings watched the battle recordings in stunned silence. They had broadcast their attack on Harvest III for all to see. Now human news networks broadcast the response. On the High Senate convened an emergency meeting. For generations, they had mocked human diplomats. They had called them cowards and weaklings. They had refused to treat humans as equals. Now they watched a single human battleship destroy a dreadnought with one shot, and they felt something they had not felt in a very long time. Fear. We must reinforce our borders immediately, the Senate leader declared. Double the patrols, triple them. We cannot allow the humans to think we are a threat. We have done nothing to them, another senator protested. We have not attacked their colonies or killed their people. We have insulted them for 300 years. We have treated them like dirt beneath our feet. The leader's voice was shaking. What if they decide to take revenge for every slight, every insult, every time we laughed at them? The Senate voted unanimously to send a message of friendship and support to Earth. They also voted to build more warships as quickly as possible, just in case friendship was not enough. They responded differently. They were a proud species who had always believed themselves superior to all others. They had refused to touch humans because they considered human flesh disgusting and unclean. Now the ambassador to the Galactic Assembly personally traveled to the human embassy on the capital world. He walked up to Ambassador Cole, the same woman he had refused to shake hands with years ago. I wish to apologize, he said stiffly. My behavior in the past was inappropriate. Looked at him with the same gentle smile she had always worn. Thank you, Ambassador. Apology accepted. I would also like to discuss a trade agreement. They have many resources that might be valuable to your people. I am sure we can find terms that benefit both our species, extended her hand. Shall we shake on it? The ambassador hesitated for only a moment. Then he reached out and clasped her hand firmly. Yes, he said, I believe we shall. On the High Council gathered in their great chamber to receive news of the battle. They had expected reports of victory. They had expected to hear about human colonies burning and human fleets fleeing in terror. Instead, they watched their mighty dreadnought vanish in a flash of light. How is this possible? The council speaker demanded. Our intelligence said the humans had no military worth speaking of. They said human ships were old and outdated. They said we could crush them in a matter of days. Our intelligence was wrong, the defense minister admitted. His voice was hollow with shock. Badly wrong. The humans have been hiding their true capabilities for centuries. We had no idea. Then what do we do now? Send more ships. Destroy them before they become an even greater threat. Before anyone could answer, a communication alert sounded. The human ambassador had requested an immediate audience with the council. Her name was. She had served as Earth's representative on the for 12 years. In all that time, she had smiled through every insult and accepted every humiliation with quiet grace. The council had grown used to treating her like a servant. Now walked into the great chamber with a different kind of smile on her face. It was not the gentle, patient smile they had seen before. This smile was cold and hard, the smile of a predator who had finally removed her disguise. Council members, she said, her voice echoed through the chamber. You have seen what happened at Harvest III. You have seen what our weapons can do. You have seen that we are not the weak, helpless creatures you believed us to be. You dare threaten us in our own chamber. the council speaker snarled. "We will destroy your entire species for this insult." "You will try," clasped her hands behind her back, "and you will fail, but that is not why I am here. I am here to give you one chance to end this war before more of your people die." She touched a button on her communication device. A holographic display appeared in the air, showing a list of names. "These are the individuals responsible for ordering the attack on Harvest III. High Commander, who is already dead. Admiral, who commanded the cruiser Wing. General, who planned the operation. And 17 others who approved the mission." "What do you want?" the defense minister asked. "You have 48 hours to surrender these individuals to human custody. They will face trial for crimes against humanity. If they are found guilty, they will be punished according to our laws. If they are innocent, they will be released." "And if we refuse?" Smile grew colder. "Then we will destroy your orbital infrastructure. Every space station, every shipyard, every satellite in orbit around this world will be reduced to debris. You have seen what our weapons can do. You know this is not an empty threat." "This is extortion," the council speaker hissed. "This is justice." Turned to face him directly. "You chose to attack civilians. You chose to murder 40,000 innocent people. You chose to broadcast their deaths as entertainment for your population. You made this war. We are simply finishing it." She looked around the chamber at the faces of the most powerful beings in the hegemony. None of them would meet her eyes. 47 hours and 58 minutes, said. "I suggest you use the time wisely." She turned and walked out of the chamber without waiting for a response. The council sat in stunned silence, watching her go. For 3 centuries, they had believed humans were weak. They had laughed at human kindness and mocked human diplomacy. They had been so certain of their own superiority that they had never bothered to look beneath the surface. Now they understood the truth. Human courtesy was not weakness. Human patience was not fear. And human kindness had been a choice, not a necessity. The humans had chosen to be gentle. They had chosen to be friendly. They had chosen to smile and negotiate and turn the other cheek. And now they had chosen to stop. The war ended 6 weeks after it began. What the hegemony had expected to be a quick and easy conquest turned into the worst defeat in their 1,000-year history. The High Council surrendered the war criminals within the 48-hour deadline. They had no choice. Human fleets had positioned themselves around every major world, their weapons ready to fire at the first sign of resistance. The proud commanders who had laughed at human weakness were dragged from their homes in chains and transported to Earth for trial. High Commander was already dead, killed when his dreadnought was destroyed at the Battle of Harvest III. But 17 others stood trial in the International Court of Justice in The Hague. The proceedings were broadcast across the entire galaxy so that every species could see how humans dealt with their enemies. The trials were fair. Each defendant was given lawyers to represent them. Evidence was presented and examined carefully. Witnesses about what they had seen and experienced. Nothing was hidden or rushed. The process took 4 months, but when it was over, no one could claim that justice had not been served. 14 of the defendants were found guilty of crimes against humanity. They received sentences ranging from 20 years to life in prison. 3 were found not guilty due to lack of evidence and were released back to the hegemony as promised. Many beings across the galaxy expected the humans to execute the guilty. That was what they would have done. That was what most species would have done. But humans were different. "Death is too easy," Secretary General Victor explained in a speech to the United Nations. "Death ends suffering. It allows the guilty to escape the weight of their crimes. We want these beings to live. We want them to spend every day of their long lives remembering what they did. We want them to know that their actions had consequences." The High Council signed a treaty that ended the war and paid reparations to the families of those killed on Harvest III. The money could not bring back the dead, but it helped the survivors rebuild their lives. It paid for new homes and new schools and new hospitals. It funded scholarships for children who had lost their parents. Admiral Price retired from the military 3 years after the war ended. He was 67 years old and tired of fighting. He had seen enough death to last several lifetimes. Bought a small farm on Mars and spent his remaining years growing tomatoes in greenhouses. The red soil of Mars was not ideal for farming, but enjoyed the challenge. It gave him something to focus on besides the memories. Every year on March 15, would sit down and write letters to the families of those who had died at Harvest III. He told them about the battle and how their loved ones had been avenged. He told them that humanity would never forget the sacrifice of those 40,000 souls. He told them that their deaths had not been meaningless. The letters took weeks to write. There were so many names, so many families, so many stories that had been cut short by cruelty, but wrote every single one by hand because he believed they deserved that much respect. Ambassador left her position on the and returned to Earth. 2 years later, she was elected Secretary General of the United Nations, the youngest person ever to hold that office. Under his leadership, humanity negotiated new treaties with 47 different species. Trade routes expanded. Cultural exchange programs brought aliens and humans together to learn from each other. Human medical technology saved millions of lives across the galaxy, curing diseases that had plagued other species for centuries. But everyone remembered what lay beneath the smile. Human diplomats were still polite and friendly. They still offered favorable trade terms and volunteered for peacekeeping missions. They still turned the other cheek when insulted and sought peaceful solutions to conflicts. And everyone knew that this kindness was a choice. Everyone knew what would happen if that choice changed. On the 10th anniversary of the Harvest III massacre, a memorial was built on the rebuilt colony world. The new settlement was smaller than the old one, but it was growing every year. Farmers had returned to work the fields. Families had come to raise children in the shadow of the monument. Governor Boyd gave the dedication speech. She was 35 years old now, the former communication officer who had survived the attack by hiding in a basement shelter while the world burned above her. She still had nightmares about that night. She probably always would. "We came to the stars hopping to make friends," said, her voice carrying across the silent crowd. "We extended our hands in peace to every species we met. We smiled at those who insulted us. We forgave those who wronged us. Many of them laughed at us. Some of them tried to destroy us." She paused and looked out at the gathering. Humans stood shoulder to shoulder with aliens from a dozen different worlds, and even a few had come to pay their respects. The galaxy was different now. The laughter had stopped. "They learned something important that day," continued. "Kindness is not weakness, patience is not fear, and courtesy, freely given, should never be mistaken for inability to fight." She reached out and touched the memorial stone. It was a simple black granite pillar, polished smooth and covered with names. 31,000 names, carved so small that you had to get close to read them. Each name was a life. Each name was a story that had ended too soon. "We will always choose peace first," said. "We will always extend our hand in friendship before we raise it in anger. We will always give our enemies the chance to walk away." Her voice grew harder. "But we will never again apologize for being strong enough to protect the people we love. We will never again hide our strength out of fear that others might resent us. And we will never, ever forget what happens when peaceful people are pushed too far." The crowd was silent. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. "To those who died here 10 years ago, I say this: you are not forgotten. Your sacrifice gave humanity the wake-up call we needed. Because of you, we are stronger. Because of you, we are united. Because of you, no one will ever make the mistake of thinking humans are easy prey again." Step back from the podium. The ceremony ended with a moment of silence that stretched across the entire planet. 40,000 people had died here. Their memory would live forever. In the years that followed, other species would sometimes ask human diplomats why they were so polite. Why did humans smile so much? Why did they offer such generous trade terms? Why did they work so hard to avoid conflict? The answer was always the same. Because we remember what happens when we stop pretending to be courteous. We prefer not to go there again. Some aliens did not understand. They thought it was a joke or a riddle, but those who had lived through the war knew exactly what it meant. Humanity had spent 3 centuries being kind because kindness was the right choice. They had been patient because patience was wise. They had smiled because smiles opened doors that anger never could. But beneath the kindness was steel. Beneath the patience was preparation. And beneath the smiles was a species that had fought and clawed and bled its way to the stars against impossible odds. The galaxy had finally learned the truth about humans. They were not weak. They were not afraid. They were simply choosing to be gentle. And that choice, freely made, was more terrifying than any weapon could ever be. Because a species that chose peace while holding the power to wage war was a species that understood something profound about the universe. Violence was easy. Cruelty was simple. Any fool could destroy. But building, creating, forgiving, those required strength that most species could not imagine. Humanity had that strength. They had proven it by hiding their power for 300 years. They had proven it by giving their enemies every chance to surrender. They had proven it by showing mercy to those who had shown them none. And they would continue to prove it, day after day, year after year, century after century, until the galaxy finally understood that the strongest beings in the universe were not those who used their power freely. They were those who could have destroyed everything and chose not to. That was humanity's final lesson to the stars, and it was one the galaxy would never forget.